Okay, so chapter 52 is very much a continuation, like a direct continuation from Isaiah's message here at the end of chapter 51, where Isaiah is calling to the people of Israel who have survived the tribulation as the cup of God's wrath is transferring from Israel to their tormentors at the day of the Lord and the arrival of the Messiah. Israel's experiencing deliverance. And so here's what happens in that context. Now we get into chapter 52. Awake, awake. He's calling them into action. Again, same thing. Wake up, get moving, put on your strength, put on your beautiful garments, O Jerusalem, the holy city, calling them to action because their deliverance is at hand and something remarkable is happening. The cup of God's wrath is leaving, and now the cup of God's wrath is being poured out on the wicked nations. For there shall no more come into you the uncircumcised or the unclean. Now this is fascinating, talking about Jerusalem, to say that Isaiah mentions that no unclean thing will enter Jerusalem in the Messianic age. And we alluded to this a little bit in Isaiah 26. Isaiah 26 verse 1 literally says that salvation are the walls of the city. And it seems to imply in that chapter that salvation is kind of the barrier to entry. Salvation is like, you've got to be a recipient of salvation to even have access to Messianic Jerusalem. And that really seems to be what Isaiah is describing here, and that is 100% verified by the Apostle John in the book of Revelation. We're not getting into that in this one. We'll come back to it when we get there. But he's saying, no more is any uncircumcised or unclean thing will enter you. Shake off from the dust and arise. Shake yourself off from the dust, like literally from the tribulation. Like you're literally having to emerge from wreckage and destruction. Shake off your dust and arise and be seated. Oh, that's so cool. Oh, Jerusalem, take your place. Jerusalem, as the capital of the nations, loose the bonds from your necks, O captive daughter of Zion. For thus says the Lord. He goes on to describe the nature of their redemption, mirrors the nature of their enslavement, for lack of a better term, because Israel kind of sold themselves. Like they voluntarily entered into captivity as a consequence of their iniquity. And that's what we looked at in chapter 50, verse 1. He says, for your iniquities you were sold, and for your transgressions your mother was sent away. But he said the Lord is going to deal with that. The Lord has secured your redemption as a gift of God, as the only one who would be capable of securing your redemption. And at that time, when the deliverer comes and sets them free and secures their redemption and brings them in for covenant renewal, therefore, my people shall know my name. Therefore, in that day, they shall know that it is I who speak. Here I am. The Lord is at hand. And so here's what happens. He says, how beautiful on the mountains are the feet of those who bring good news and who publish peace and bring good news of happiness, who publishes salvation, who says to Zion, your God reigns. Now here we have a literal description of messengers who are dispatched in the Messianic age to proclaim the good news of Israel's deliverance and the arrival of the Messiah. Many of those events are concentrated around the Middle East, and that news actually has to reach the ends of the earth in the Messianic age, much like the first advent of the Messiah has to reach the ends of the earth in this age. They're kind of two expressions of the Great Commission. And this is paralleled in Isaiah chapter 12. But for the sake of time, let's jump on to verse 8. The voice of your watchmen, they lift up the voice and together they sing for joy, meaning those of you who are looking out on the horizon, what do they see? Like from that direction to that direction, in every direction, the return of the Lord to Zion. So break forth together into singing, you waste places of Jerusalem, for the Lord has comforted his people. He's redeemed Jerusalem. The Lord has bared his holy arm. Again, here it is, through his Messiah. The Lord is bearing his arm and accomplishing his covenant purposes on the earth, and all the ends of the earth shall see the salvation of our God. Again, the dramatic extent of Israel's deliverance and restoration in the Messianic age is the Lord's chosen gospel proof to the rest of the nations as the ultimate fulfillment of the Great Commission. In this context, as Israel is being delivered and set free from the cup of God's wrath, And Israel's enemies are being devastated by the Messiah. And as Israel is being awakened and saved and returning to the land, and there's salvation taking place and all of the surrounding, descriptions that we've looked at about that, as they see the Lord returning to Zion, they break forth into singing. The people go out, they publish the good news, and the Lord has bared his holy arm, and all the ends of the earth will know it. They will see the salvation of our God. I love it. This whole context is uniquely designed, specifically designed to cause the earth to see the salvation of God. It is carefully orchestrated to achieve this outcome. And so Isaiah calls to the returning refugees, those who are just emerging from their imprisonment and from their places where they've sought shelter. He says, depart, go out from there. You can leave. Take up your stuff and go. He says, and don't touch any unclean thing, because they're returning for purification. They're going to return for a covenant renewal ceremony that Isaiah is going to talk about here in a moment. But he says, go out from the places where you've been hidden or imprisoned and purify yourselves. Probably especially those who might bear some special vessels and artifacts for the restoration of Jerusalem. For you will not go out in haste. He's basically sharing the news with them. Your captors have been defeated. Your enemies have been defeated. You don't have to take flight. You don't have to flee. You don't have to run anymore. You're not going to have to run away anymore or be in this fear or fight or flight type of mindset. But no, your God will go before you, and the God of Israel will be your rear guard. And remember, we described all of those provisions in chapter 49, verses 9 through 12, where the God makes supernatural provisions for his people. So when he says the Lord will go before you, like that's literal. Like the Lord makes provision of food and water and shade for you along the path. And this section right here, calling the captives and refugees back home, is what a lot of commentators say sort of concludes this section from 49 to 52, verse 12. And now we're kind of entering into a new section in 52:13 and onward that really focuses back in on the Messiah again. So here we go. Behold, we've got kind of a new section starting, returning to the subject of the Messiah specifically, who we talked about in Isaiah 49, but we're going to elaborate on that a little bit here. My servant will act wisely, and he will be high and lifted up. He will be exalted. And then this has confused a lot of commentators. I'm going to try to just simplify it for you. I have a little bit more dialogue about this in the notes of what this really means, and you can see I've actually got quite a bit in the notes about this. The Messiah will act wisely and through his wisdom restore many nations. That sprinkling seems to be maybe a summary phrase for the restoration that takes place. Just as the Messiah has restored and maybe sprinkled Israel and the nations were astonished by it, no, those nations that were astonished will also experience that restoration. And that restoration leaves their kings speechless because they're seeing that which they were not told and that which they've not heard. They're understanding it because they're experiencing it for themselves. That, I think, has got to be the most likely thing that would have been in Isaiah's mind at that moment. But okay, now Isaiah continues this conversation seamlessly into chapter 53.